Sometimes you wanna go where everybody. We're going to be getting started in about 3 minutes. We'll be getting started in about a minute and a half. We'll be starting the review in about 60 seconds. Testing.
The
1,
help
2, 3.
menu is always available.
There we go.
You can go there and choose Explain the screen to repeat this explanation.
Okay, that's great. I don't know how I selected the health menu. But anyways, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Norm Phil's video, What is Realized Eschatology? Now this is a video he did a couple weeks ago. It got about 3,400 views, a lot, impressive amount of views. And we're going to finish up reviewing that now that we've eaten our lunch. We've delivered our food to the wife, and now we're back into reviewing the video. Let's begin.
Commenting in the
he's about to take
chat.
to tell you where he's at. He's about to take questions and answers from the live chat. So let's see what he has to say there.
Hello, Terry. Hello, Bob. Hello, Eric. Let's see. The doctrine makes 0 sense. Eric, you are 100% right. It makes 0 sense.
He says it makes 0 sense, and yet he agreed that all Old Testament prophecy, not just all Old Testament prophecy, mind you, all Old Testament statements had already been fulfilled. Now, does it make sense or does it not make sense? He agrees with some of it, so then it doesn't make 0% sense. It should make like 30% sense or 56% sense, you know. But to say it makes 0 sense kind of goes against a lot of the stuff that he's already said. But I know it's a hyperbole. Let's continue on, though.
Absolutely 0. Same insanity as I'm not sure what that word is. Some point of Calvinism. You're right. Calvinism doesn't make any sense either. Squirming. That's right. Yeah. You point out things that Calvinists teach that don't fit with Scripture.
Since Norm is so ready to use this type of language to discuss my views and other people's views who agree with me, I'd like to make a little challenge. Why not Norm and I go on a video exchange together, point by point, video by video, and he makes a point, I'll make a point in response, and we just go back and forth like that in little 5 or 10 minute videos. I think that'd be fun, don't you? So Norm, if you're listening, if you're out there, if you can hear me, I like to invite you to this exchange. Just get in touch with me. My email address is daniel@labornotinvain.com. I'll put it in the description below so that you can take a look at that. In fact, I'm typing it in there as we speak. Just reach out to me, comment on this video, email me, and I would love to go on a little video exchange with you if you'd like and talk about some of these key issues. Let's keep going though.
And they squirm all over the place and try to wiggle out of it and say, well, that's not what it means. It means this. And, just the Apostle Paul said, look at Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 2 beginning, where the Apostle Paul says there, if indeed you have heard of the dispensation of the grace of God which was given to me for you, how that by revelation he made known to me the mystery, as I have briefly written already, by which when you read,
use library to find content in your
mystery of Christ. I wish people would just read the scriptures and accept what they say without all of the twisting and wriggling and squirming, and just follow the scriptures.
That sounds good to me. Doesn't it sound good to you folks? Let's do that for a moment, shall we? Matthew 16, 27 and 28 says, for the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and he will repay every man according to his deeds. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. No twisting, no squirming, no worming around. Is that, or is that not, Jesus coming within that generation? Not only that, let's look at Daniel chapter 12 and verse 2. Now, Norm says this is AD 70. He said that in his speech the other day. In fact, he said no Old Testament statement can be found to discuss something past AD 70. Now, notice Daniel 12 verse 2. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these everlasting life, others who disgrace and everlasting contempt. Norm, don't squirm, don't wiggle around. You tell me how people came up out of the dust in AD 70. Let's hear it. How do they come up out of the dust? Don't squirm. Don't try to change these words. Don't go try to change the word dust. Don't try to change the word ground, okay? Now, these people aren't dead. They're sleeping, okay? you get what I'm saying? Here's my point. The Bible uses a different type of language. It uses words differently than we do in the 21st century. Listen, 40 years ago, not even 40 years ago, more than that, 80 years ago, in World War II, what do you have? Not 80, 70. Okay, 70 years ago in World War II, they had this phrase. He bought the farm. Now, to buy the farm meant an individual died, okay? And so the government would pay the family enough money, and that would be able to buy the family farm, all right? When an individual died in the battle in World War II. So they said he bought the farm. Now, if you tell somebody that you bought the farm, that so-and-so bought the farm back in the 1940s, that's what they're going to take that to mean. But go up to a teenager or somebody my age, or even somebody maybe even older than me, and say, hey, did you know that Bob bought the farm? Well, they're going to understand that expression differently than they would have 50, 60, 70 years ago. Same thing is true with the first century. Listen, if there is a gap in language from the 1940s to 2018 in the same language, English language, then how much more of a gap should we expect between 21st century westernized America and Eastern Hebrew, by Hebrew I mean culture, Eastern Hebrew, Greek-speaking people in the first century? Shouldn't we expect a gap? Shouldn't we expect to have to try a little to understand what they're saying and how they're using these words? Norm wants you to read the Bible like you do a newspaper. But the writers of the newspapers of today, their situations are different from what it was in the first century. They use language differently. They use words differently. They use different idioms and things like that. Even somebody today who studies English grammar in China and then comes to America to attend university, they don't understand all the nuances in the English language. You have to understand that language within the context that it's used. And he's suggesting that we just pick it up and just read it like a newspaper, and not looking into the background and looking into the culture, and look how these people in the Old Testament and New Testament alike use this language consistently. Let's go back to Norm now.
Thank you for your good comments. I appreciate it. All right, let's go over to YouTube now. YouTube, hello Todd, hello Matt, hello Andy. Okay, Andy is getting reported to YouTube.
Uh-oh.
Let's see.
Must have had some troublemakers in his chat there. Hope it wasn't
I
a...
don't know what to report you as, Andy, so I'm just going to pick that one. Maybe Andy will lose his YouTube account. And he'll learn a lesson about being a crude little creep. Okay.
That's funny.
Let's see.
It's not funny that the guy was being mean to him. It's funny that the guy that Norm says, I don't know what to pick, so I'm just gonna pick that one. That's funny.
Need to find a gospel preaching church, Matt. Matt, message me your address and where you are, and I'll see if I can't help you find a sound congregation in your area. I see somebody else already asked where you at, Matt. Matt's out in California. That might be a task. No, Matt, we'll help you find a good congregation out there, I'm sure. So I'll look into that, Matt. Hawthorne, California. I'll look into that. Let's see. Lee, good to see you. Appreciate you watching this evening. Good job describing this. In our recent Bible studies here at the local church in Monticello, Arkansas, I have made the point from a secular perspective as well. I have yet to find any writings from 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century Christians that refers to the destruction of Jerusalem as the coming of Christ, the final judgment.
That's actually an insignificant point and actually bears no weight in this discussion at all. We in the Churches of Christ have established over and over again that our only base is Scripture. You can go to the Church Fathers all you want to, but that is not what I base my faith off of. If my faith was dependent upon them, I would have one president over the elders. I would have sprinkling. I would have all sorts of things that aren't found in the New Testament. Now, he's going to go to the Church Fathers here. Or maybe he'll rebuke this person, but they're going to go to the Church Fathers to try to prove or disprove something. That is an appeal to an illegitimate authority. No way, no how. You cannot go to the Church Fathers to prove something about New Testament Christianity. There's no way to know who these men were. There's no way to know what their backgrounds were. There's no way to know. There is a way to know, though, that they weren't inspired. They didn't have the Holy Spirit in the miraculous sense. They weren't inspired to write the writings that they have. No reason whatsoever we should listen to them on anything. The Bible only. As the Restoration Movement has said, we speak where the Bible speaks, and we're silent where the Bible is silent. We don't have any need to go to Irenaeus or to Eusebius or to Origen or any of these guys to get anything for our faith. All they serve is an uninspired commentary on the Bible at best. All the creeds, all that stuff, you can talk about them if you want to. You can appreciate them if you'd like. But at the end of the day, all that matters is what the Bible says. All right? People asking me, do you subscribe to whatever creed? And, I respect that. I understand where they're coming from. I'm not disparaging them, but I've got no idea what they're talking about. In the Churches of Christ, we don't care anything about that. No creed but the Bible is what people have always said. There is this one book called Why I'm a Member of the Churches of Christ, but it's not really a creed. That's just being silly. Let's continue on with Norm. Let's hear what he says about the old Church Fathers.
That's a great point.
No, it's not. It's not a great point. Sorry.
And one that should come up in the course of this study.
It shouldn't come up at all because it's insignificant. The Church Fathers contribute nothing to faith in any way. The Church Fathers could say that Jesus came again in AD 70, and every single one of them could have said it, and I don't care, okay? That doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the proof is the Bible. Listen to me again. If every single Church Father said that the Lord came in AD 70, and the resurrection took place in AD 70, and what have you, that really doesn't matter. That would be cool. Sure, that's neat. That's cool, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, if the Bible affirms the future coming of the Christ, that's what I'm going to believe. If the Bible affirms that Jesus came in AD 70, or that he would come in AD 70, obviously the Bible affirms a future coming of Christ. They weren't there yet, all right? So if the Bible affirms a future coming of Christ to me, yes, that's great. If the Bible affirms the coming of the Lord at 80-70, that's what I'm going to go with. Doesn't matter what any church father has to say. Doesn't matter what any guy in the 21st century has to say, okay? Don Preston's a great guy, but I don't depend upon him for my theology. I don't depend upon him for my faith. Does he contribute some good insights? Is he a good role model? Yes. But at the end of the day, if I have to pick between Don Preston and the Bible, or William Bell and the Bible, or Don or Steve Bazin or Holger Neubauer or anybody else in the Bible, if I have to pick between Daniel Rogers and the Bible, you know what I'm going to do? Out with the book. Who cares about this book? Let's get to the Bible. Look. Don't care what the church fathers have to say. It's interesting. You wonder why they didn't write about the fall of Jerusalem in 80-70 to the extent that we do, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's an appeal to an illegitimate authority. And we're about to have a member of the Church of Christ tell us that it's a really good idea to go to the church traditions to see what we ought to believe. And by the way, it's the church traditions is about the only place you're going to find anything about the end of time, specifically the Catholic catechisms. But we'll leave those discussions to Sam Dawson.
If the earliest disciples understood that the destruction of Jerusalem was the second coming of Christ, none of them ever said so.
Sure they did. Sure they did. Look at this in Revelation chapter 11. Here's what you have in Revelation chapter 11. He says in chapter 11 that this temple would be destroyed, the holy city would be destroyed for 42 months. This is the city where the Lord was slain, as he says in verse 8. Take a look at this here. Verse 1 and 2, this is where the temple would be destroyed for 42 months. This is the city where the Lord was slain in verse 8. And this would be the time, notice this now, at the end of this chapter, whenever the kingdom would come, as he says, whenever the dead would be judged and the prophets would receive their award. All right? So John thought it was going to be when the temple was destroyed. Okay? Now, guys in the 2nd century and 3rd century who were not inspired in any way, shape, form, or fashion, who in no way, shape, form, or fashion serve as our authority, they might have said something different. Good news is I don't have to depend upon them, otherwise we'd be sprinkling folks and having presidents over the elderships and bishops and all this other kind of stuff. But luckily, our authority comes from the Bible. Bishops in the Roman Catholic sense, not in the New Testament sense.
You know, you got people like Polycarp, who was a disciple of John. You know, that's one of the earliest Christian writers. Clement of Rome, one of the earliest Christian writers. Origen. None of them ever said that the second coming of Christ has already happened at the destruction of Jerusalem. Seems to me like they would have said so, that they would have mentioned that that's what the apostles taught. That's what Jesus taught, and that's what the apostles taught.
Now, to be fair, those people did talk about the fall of Jerusalem, and they did speak of it as God's judgment, and even in some cases the end of the world and the coming of the Lord. And those things have been documented by people such as Kurt Simmons has got a lot of good stuff. It's on that Preterist, what's it called? Preterist Archives or whatever it is. Man, I don't remember that website, but there's a ton of quotes on there from the church fathers. But again, that doesn't matter. Like, I don't care about that stuff, you know. It's interesting, it's intriguing, but at the end of the day, what does the Bible say? That's what I want to hear, all right? You might see that as arrogant or something like, I don't know what you might see that as, but those guys, all they contribute at most is uninspired commentary. End of rant. No more discussion about that.
And so that's the way we're supposed to understand it. We don't have any of that in the early church writings. None. So that's a very good point, Lee. I appreciate that. How is it that this AD 70 doctrine has randomly come about, and that for all of these centuries, brethren have been wrong on this topic? Wow.
It hasn't randomly come about is the funny thing about it. There was a guy back in the 1800s. I got 2 of his books on my computer right here. His name was Cyrus Jeffries. He wrote 2 books. He's a member of the Church of Christ. At least that's the name on his building. You can dispute all you'd like about the particular details about whether he was a member of the one true church, but he had Church of Christ on his building, is the interesting point. And he had 2 books. One was called The Doctrine of the Two Resurrections, and he had the idea that the resurrection took place in AD 70, and then each individual, once they die, they receive a heavenly body, is what his idea was. And then he had another book called The Doctrine of the Two Judgments. Again, the judgment of the world in AD 70 and the individual judgment that one receives upon death. Okay, so he had these two books that he put out, preterist books. Another point, not proud of this one, but a guy named John Guiteau, I think was his name, or Charles Guiteau. Let's see. Can't remember exactly. It was the guy that actually assassinated James Garfield, believe it or not. He wasn't a full preterist, but he was like a 95% preterist. He thought that there was going to be an end of the world. It's kind of weird how what he believed. But you got other guys going even further back into history that I know Don's talked about, and they're documented on the Preterist Archive website, that held preterist views with the scriptures, back through time. But again, that does not matter. My faith is not, I don't have to inherit my faith from anybody. I don't have to be able to trace my faith back through the centuries. All I have to do is be able to find it in black and white and red, I suppose, right there in the Bible. All right, that's all that matters. Every other source is secondary when it comes to interpretation of the scriptures. Let's get back to Norm.
Lee, the proponents of the AD 70 doctrine that I have talked to sound just like, exactly like, cults that will say, for example, Mormonism, that says until Joseph Smith found those golden plates and the angel Moroni interpreted those golden plates to him, that the church was in exile, however they put it, that basically the church had gone out of existence until Joseph Smith brought it back. And
I mean, he probably doesn't say this. I wouldn't say this. But there's some people that say that about the Church of Christ and Alexander Campbell. I don't say he says that. I don't say that. But I'm saying some people do say that. But again, I haven't heard anybody that's talked about this before or have taken this position. And the thing about it is, just too much to get into. But this is just an appeal to illegitimate authority. And that's all we're going to say as for right now. All right, let's keep going.
And Jehovah's Witnesses say the same kinds of things, and Seventh-day Adventists say the same kinds of things, until Ellen G. White started teaching about the Sabbath and keeping the Sabbath. The church was dormant. The church had gone out of existence until they brought it back. Well, that's the exact same kind of thing that these proponents of the AD 70 doctrine teach. Because if you ask them, well, how come nobody has been teaching that? How come that's been unknown for so long that you have no teaching on that, down from the first century church till now? They'll say, well, it's being restored. The church is being brought back, being restored to this understanding. Just like the cultists say. They are a cult. I am convinced that the AD 70 movement, the realized eschatology movement, is a cult in the making, because they talk just like every other cult that's ever been. It wouldn't be the first cult that's come out of the Lord's church, would it? The Roman Catholicism came out of the Lord's church, the Church of Christ. The Boston movement, I'm sure there's been others that have been lost to the pages of history, but the Boston Roads movement, or the Crossroads movement, Boston Church, Crossroads movement, or International Church of Christ, or whatever they're going by now, that was a cult that came out of the Lord's church. And so this AD 70 movement, realized eschatology, is just another cult that's come.
Yeah, the idea that realized eschatology, covenant eschatology, is a cult is kind of silly. We've been through this before with other people, and it's been refuted time and time again. The same charge is made against the Church of Christ. The same charge is made against other religious organizations, but it's always just used as a cop-out to just avoid having to do any real exegesis. And so it's just kind of a waste of time to go into it. So let's just keep going. Maybe we'll get through this point quickly.
Out teaching false doctrine and drawing away followers after themselves instead of after the Lord Jesus Christ. And so you're right, Lee. Absolutely right. Very, very good point. Let's see. let's see, J.S. Brown should want to address me. Oh, Jeff. Okay, Jeff.
My sweet tea is starting in the water. It's not that good anymore, but I kind of habitually drink it, so whatever.
Well, it looks like some interaction between the viewers, and that's great. I appreciate it when the viewers interact with each other. Okay, well, if there's no other questions or comments, I appreciate your input in the program. Had some very good comments, some very good interaction. And so if there's nothing further, let's see, Eric says, thank you, Karen, I appreciate that. Let me see, looks like I missed some things. Let's see, hello Brenda. Shane, a number of things happened before and by 70, but clearly the resurrection from the dead was not one of them. That's, you know, and I think I said that starting out, Shane. I think I made that point. If I didn't, I need to. I do not believe that there is any as yet unfulfilled biblical prophecy except for the second coming of Christ. That is the only biblical prophecy that has not yet been fulfilled that we still look forward to. The apostasy already happened. We have the Roman Catholic Church to prove it. The destruction of Jerusalem already happened, and the destruction of Jerusalem is the furthest reaching Old Testament prophecy. So by the destruction of Jerusalem, all Old Testament prophecy was fulfilled.
All Old Testament prophecy was fulfilled. That's what he says. He says it several times. He really needs to consider this position he's taken, because Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15 that the resurrection would be in fulfillment of Isaiah 25 and verse 8. Not only that, he said in Acts chapter 24 and verse 15 that his hope for a future resurrection of the just and the unjust would be in fulfillment of everything written in the law and in the prophets. He's got a problem with that, and that's something that he's going to have to overcome to be able to hold on to this doctrine that he has. But let's keep going.
When the apostasy happened, that fulfilled a great deal of the prophetic statements that the apostles made. And the only thing as yet unfulfilled in the New Testament is the second coming of Christ. So if is that preterism? Is that what that's referred to? I think the realized eschatology people use the term full preterist, meaning that everything's been fulfilled. But preterist means that the things that the book of Revelation talks about are fulfilled, and the destruction of Jerusalem, and these things that they're already fulfilled, but that would not include the second coming of Christ. So I do believe that the second coming of Christ is the only thing that's not yet been fulfilled. And it very obviously has not, because I'm still here talking to you, and which I could not be if it had already happened. All right. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. Eric, appreciate that. I'll keep doing what I can. Let's see. Yeah, Eric, this Max King, I think, was the first one that really got this rolling. And I was under the impression, it's been, I guess, maybe 3 years or so, about that, you know, maybe 3-4 years. I don't remember exactly when it was. But I was under the impression that the Max King doctrine, as I had learned it, the 80-70 doctrine that Max King taught, that it had been dealt with, that it had been refuted, and that
Okay, well, we're kind of getting into some stuff that doesn't really have any substance to it. So I'm kind of tempted to just kill the video feed, but we've got 11 more minutes of stuff. What am I supposed to do with this? See, this is why I need to vet the videos that I do, but I usually watch like the first 15 minutes or the first 10 minutes. Actually, as we were going through yesterday, I think I only watched about 8 minutes of this, not 15 like I originally said. So I don't really vet the material. I just kind of go through it, so it's sort of a first impressions kind of situation. I don't have time to make notes or anything like that. Everything's off the cuff. So I don't know what this last 10 minutes has. Is it just kind of like random stuff, or is it going to be anything of substance? Now, he just brought up the Max King doctrine, and this goes to show you that he really doesn't know. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but he really doesn't know what he's talking about. If he says that Max King doctrine, he didn't realize that was the same thing as 80-70 doctrine or whatever. I don't use any of those terms to describe myself, but there's obviously some confusion here that he should have gotten through all this and worked through it all before he ever even started to make this video. All right, let's keep going though.
It was pretty much dead and gone. And then somebody asked me a question, or they asked a question about 80-70 doctrine. You know, what I thought about it, and I said, well, it's a loony. That was my exact term, I think, if I remember correctly. It's a loony, off the wall, false doctrine that has been put to bed, thankfully. And the person went off on me and said, you're just going to call it loony without even examining it or anything? And come to my shock, my surprise, that this person believed it. Believed the 80-70 doctrine. And that was the first indication I got.
You know, maybe if we quit calling people loony and start trying to have honest, open discussions about the Bible, we could get a lot more done. This type of attitude doesn't help get anything accomplished. You know, yesterday when I watched the video, I was, you know, his little jokes he was making, I thought they were funny, thought he had a good spirit about him, but he needs to cut out the rhetoric and just get to the scripture. You know, all this foolishness needs to be put to rest. You know, just pet peeve of mine. Let's keep going though.
That it had made a resurgence, and Scott.
Let me tell you, I was about to say Scott Claff. Scott Claff's a good guy. Listen, here's what happened. William Bell told me this a couple weeks ago. What happened was they were sitting around and they were talking about the future of covenant eschatology. Okay, and William said, he made the point, I think what's going to happen is people in the church are going to reject this, but people in the denominational, people in other, you know, in the denominational world and other religious groups, they're going to start picking it up, and then eventually people in the church are going to start picking up on it again. And that's exactly what happened. He was right about that. So it wasn't that it went away, it was that different people began to pick up on it, and you know, from that a lot of good has taken place in terms of you know, in terms of the truth of the gospel and stuff like that, not just the truth of covenant eschatology. But all right, let's get back to old Norm here from the Cheers crowd.
Claft and Steve Beisden and many, I can't name them all off the top of my head, but they have been just diligent in spreading this pernicious false doctrine, and it amazes me how many people they have got to go along with.
Hang on, this is a huge point here. Listen, for me, I did not know who Steve Beisden was. I didn't even know the man existed. Never spoke a word to him until way after I reached my conclusions. All right, I did not know who Don Preston. I had heard the name, but I didn't look at his material until after I had finally reached my conclusions. I didn't look at it seriously until after I finally reached my conclusions. William Bell, no idea who he was. Again, till after. Holger Neubauer, definitely didn't know Holger. Definitely didn't know Scott. All right. The point is, most of the guys that I know, aside from maybe Billy Williams and David Gates and some of those other guys who saw all this via Facebook discussions and debates, okay? Billy Williams, he was at the Beisden-Leonard debate up in Michigan, and that was the weekend that he basically said, okay, I'm agreed now, all right? The point being is this. Most people do not come to this truth because of somebody else. Most people come to this truth because they put their head down in the Bible and studied it out, all right? His assessment of the situation is completely backwards.
This just off the wall crap. I mean, there's just so much about it. You ask them, why are you still taking the Lord's Supper? Didn't Jesus say to take the Lord's Supper till I come? Paul said that we take it till he comes. Well, if he's already come, why are you still taking the Lord's Supper? And it's just shocking that they'll say, well, you know, it's it's tradition, and it's not that we're still doing it looking forward to the second coming. We're just doing it because it's kind of, it's our tradition.
That's
It's
not
good to
true.
remember
Oh
that he
my
died
goodness.
for it. Oh,
He's the arguments that he's making are just sad. He's just he's ignorant of what these guys, what I actually believe about these things. And it's just very obvious that he has not done his research before making this video.
yeah, it's good to remember that he died for us. That's great. That's great. It blows my mind that people actually fall for this nonsense.
Now you're telling me that it's wrong. Now I'm not saying that I take the Lord's Supper just out of tradition, okay? I'm not saying Steve does that, but he's going to say it's wrong for Steve to take the Lord's Supper off of tradition, and yet he's going to say that using tradition to establish a future coming of the Lord is a very good point. If it's nonsense for Steve to use tradition to take the Lord's Supper, which that's not his argument at all, by the way, then it's nonsense to take the church fathers as any kind of authority for a future coming of the Lord. This is just simple stuff, all right?
But they do. It's sad what people will fall for. So you're right,
3,400 views on this, man. Let me tell you, that's sad. That's what's sad.
Derek. Yeah, it's been around about 50 years. I thought it was dead and gone, but
No, it's not been around 50 years. Let me show you this. This book's called The Parousia. The Parousia by J. Stuart Russell. He is a 99.9999999% preterist. The only thing from what I know, and I haven't verified this completely by myself, is that he thought that there may be some sort of future into the millennium. Resurrection, past. Rapture, as it's commonly called, past. Judgment Day, past. Coming of the Lord, past. Parousia, late 1800s. Cyrus Jeffries, late 1800s. The crazy guy that killed James Garfield, late 1800s. We don't claim him though, right? Let's move on though.
apparently not. It's made a resurgent and spreading pretty rapidly. And it sounds like I'm fixing to get in a storm. I may need to sign off here. in just a minute to keep from getting blasted by a storm. Let's see, back on YouTube. It's got several names. Preteristic, realized eschatology, kingism. Yeah, I had heard it referred to as kingism before.
Nobody refers to it as kingism besides people that are against it, man. That's just, see, if you're gonna use a word to describe somebody, at least use a word that they're okay with. Okay, the word to describe his eschatology is amillennialist. Alright, that's the proper designation for what he believes. It's not, I could call it like, McGuiganism or something like that, Irenaeusism or something, but no, we're gonna keep with the proper scholarly term, amillennialism, or a term that he wants to designate himself. Okay, no need to use these disparaging terms that add nothing to the discussion and only serve to poison the well. All right.
Jeff, you're right. Now, preterism, I think they use the term full preterism or full preterist, because the term preterist has been around for a long time, and I applied that term to myself because the way I understood it basically was preterist was someone who took the view that the early date for the completion of the New Testament was the preferred date.
Very good. I appreciate that so much.
I personally believe that the New Testament was completed and in the hands of the church before the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70.
Bingo. Good job.
And so I put the latest writings of the New Testament at about 68, including Revelation and Jude, about 68 AD. It had been my understanding about that term preterist that's basically what it referred to, that you believe that the book of Revelation was fulfilled within the scope of the first century church.
Let's go ahead and say, Norm, if you believe that, you got some problems, buddy. I'm just telling you, that's what I believe for years and years and years. It's a view that I learned in high school. The book of Revelation's already been fulfilled. Okay, notice what you have though, Norm. If the book of Revelation's already been fulfilled, You've got the judgment of the prophets, or judgment of the dead and the rewarding of the prophets, Revelation chapter 11. You've got the marriage of Christ at the resurrection banquet, Revelation chapter 19, verses, like 7 through 10, something like that. I don't remember exactly. You've got the new heavens and new earth coming in, Revelation 21. The old heavens and old earth passing away, the great white throne judgment. All that stuff is within the context of the book of Revelation, all of which was going to be at hand. Now, if he believes that, if he believes that Hades has been emptied out, Revelation 20, okay, cast into the lake of fire, Revelation 20, then what's the deal, what's the trouble with Hades being destroyed in 1 Corinthians 15? What's the trouble with Jesus coming in 1 Corinthians 15? What's the trouble with the great white throne judgment, so to speak, of 2 Peter 3, where the day of judgment comes and the old heavens and old earth flee away before the presence of God. Okay, all the constituent elements found within Revelation are found everywhere else too. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ. Okay, not one of many, but the. All right, Norm, finish it up for us. Well, we still have 7 minutes, but.
And except of course the passages in like Revelation 20.
Oh, never mind. Okay, so so Revelation is at hand until it gets difficult for me. Once it gets difficult for me, like in chapter 20, then we shoot that off into the future. Listen, Norm, the whole book's at hand. The whole book's shortly to come to pass. Jesus said he's coming quickly. You can't make that stretch out for 2,000 years because it doesn't fit your paradigm. All right, buddy? I believe in you. I know you can see this. I plead with you to look at it again.
Talking about the final judgment, of course, those have not been fulfilled yet. But the imagery of
it said it was at hand, right?
Of the book, for the most part, having been fulfilled. That was my understanding of preterist. So then I started hearing the term full preterist, meaning that they believe everything has been fulfilled. Everything was fulfilled by AD 70, including the second coming of Christ. And of course, that is not my view at all. Gwendolyn, good to see you. Gwendolyn's the one that asked the question and gave me the opportunity to discuss this with you. So I appreciate that, Gwendolyn. I hope that we have answered your question. And when you asked that question last week, what is realized eschatology? I was concerned that there were those in your area that were coming around teaching that. And if they are, please make sure that the men of the congregation where you attend, the elders and all that area, everywhere you go, that they get good. There's a lot of good material out there. There's Spiritual Sword has written on it. There's lectureship books on it. There's some good material out there about this false AD 70 realized eschatology doctrine.
I would encourage them to go watch the GBN broadcast. They did it on the AD 70 doctrine, and then after that, watch my review of it. Or you can just watch my review of it because I get all their stuff in there anyways. Either be kind of like a debate. That'd be good to watch. You get both sides of the issue. That's what I would do.
Make sure they get their hands on some good material. If they need to contact me, I'll be happy to help them study this issue and make sure that it does not get in the churches there where you are. We need strong men who are able to meet these false teachers at the door. And
well, should they meet them at debate? If so, let's get some videos there going, Norm. That'd be great.
Say, you're not teaching that here. You're not teaching that here. That's what it takes. That's what we're supposed to do. Let's see. Jeff says the big proponents of it now are Don Preston, right? That's right. William Bell. And I think Don Preston and William Bell have been around, have been with it ever since Max King first taught it. If I understand right, Steve Bisden is he came around to it later. Steve Bisden, Holger Neubauer is the other one I was trying to think of. Holger Neubauer. The impression, and I don't know the man, and I've just seen him on videos and stuff, but I kind of get the impression from him that he's somebody that likes for people to kind of follow him. That he likes to have followers.
Listen, I bet that would cause Holger a great deal of consternation.
Yeah.
He likes to use that word a lot, so we always we always poke fun. But Holger's not like that at all, man. That's sad. Holger doesn't want any followers. Holger wants people to be their own people and reach their own conclusions. I know this because I've talked to the man. And if this guy has that opinion of him, if Norm has that opinion of him, he needs to go talk to Holger himself. Man, if Holger wanted followers, you know what he should do? He should go repent of any AD 70 doctrine, and he should put on a nice suit and go appear on GBN and talk about it all day. That'll get him some followers there. But it would double the number in his congregation probably, and triple his contribution. But oh well. Brent Bishop, good to see you, buddy. Consternation for sure. That's right.
So, yeah, Holger Neubauer.
Listen, if you want followers, don't come here. Don't come here. If you want money, don't follow me, please, because you're not going to get any. Let me tell you, this is the opposite way to go. If you want power, fame, fortune, and money, that is for sure. That is for sure. Man, these people.
It just blows my mind that they're able to get people to listen to them and to follow these things. These have really gone off the deep end. Yes, they have. Way, way off the deep end. I heard Holger Neubauer in a debate, and I forget who it was with, but he was just, you couldn't hardly tell the difference between him and a Jehovah's Witness. If I didn't know what the debate was on and who it was that was debating, and I just turned it on and heard him talk, I would have thought that a gospel preacher was debating a Jehovah's Witness. It blows my mind.
If he was watching Holger debate Howard Denham, he might have thought Holger was debating some kind of Loch Ness monster or something, but I don't know.
Let's see. Tommy just got here, and we're fixing to sign. I can go now. Tommy's here. Tommy, you're gonna have to go back and watch from the beginning. I'm just winding up, getting ready to end the program. Okay. Let's see. There. Shane says. Let's see. Shane says. There's the term of partial preterism and full preterism in relation to eschatology. Some would even call it hyperpreterism. I have heard that term, hyperpreterism.
Here's the thing, though. Nobody that's a preterist would call it hyperpreterism. We got to be fair and use distinctions that people use themselves, okay, or at least are acceptable and proper distinctions, okay. It's the only courteous way to handle yourself.
Like when I was in school, and up until recently, when this realized eschatology stuff really got rolling, I thought preterism was a good term, but then I started hearing, like you said, terms like hyperpreterism and full preterism and things like that, and saw where it was being applied to this realized eschatology. And I think realized eschatology is a good term for what they teach, because they believe that everything the Bible says about last things has already happened. That's
fair. Now, I've told you this before, but C.H. Dodd believed in what he called realized eschatology, and he thought that everything was fulfilled at or through the cross. All right, way back, even way before 80-70. Okay, so there's some hesitancy using that term, but I understand. I know where he's coming from. I know people that are preterists use that term. That's okay too. But I think covenant eschatology is probably the best distinction you can find.
Already been realized. So, all right. Well, if you have questions or comments or input, go ahead and put that in the comment section on the videos. Whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching
unless you're a preterist, don't put anything.
Watching on YouTube, and I will get those and respond to those, Lord willing, on a future episode of Bible Q&A. Let's see. Jeff says Holger actually came out of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, Jeff, that explains a lot.
He came out of the Jehovah's Witnesses when he was like a teenager, man. Okay. That explains a lot. Yeah, Norm. Bet it does. Ugh. Brent, I don't know what to do with these guys, man. I don't know.
I did not know that. I didn't know that Holger Neubauer used to be a Jehovah's Witness. Well, I shouldn't say used to.
He didn't.
He's basically gone back to the Jehovah's Witness and tried.
Oh, boy. Wow. Well, I don't even think Holger himself, now I might be wrong about this, but I don't think he was ever himself that he was a Jehovah's Witness. I think that I think he was raised in that environment, but he left it for sure when he was very young, and he eventually converted his mom out of it as well. So this is kind of an unfair ploy that he's using here.
Trying to take the church with him. That really explains a lot. I did not know that he had been a Jehovah's Witness. That's very enlightening. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you sharing that with me, because that really explains a lot.
You know what's funny? I've talked to several Jehovah's Witnesses, and they cannot stand what I believe. So I know that Holger is nowhere close to being a witness of the Kingdom Hall.
No, they are not teaching the doctrine. Gwendolyn's saying, no, they're not teaching the doctrine because they never heard of it. I want more information on this because it is new to me. I totally disagree with it. Good, because it's totally false.
It's not totally false, man. You agree Revelation has been fulfilled except for chapter 20. You said yourself that every Old Testament statement had been fulfilled. Okay, so you at least agree with some of it. You can't say it's totally false, all right? You got to say maybe it's like 80% false or 30% false. You got to be more specific. You agree with a lot of major tenets of the doctrine, actually.
I'm going to pass this information to the brothers. I appreciate that. That's good. I'm glad that we were able to answer your question on this. And like I said, I have barely touched the hem. We could go for another hour if my battery holds out. We could go for another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on this, and I would still just be barely touching the hem of the garment. There's so much involved in this that is just so erroneous to what the gospel teaches. I agree. He is trying to take the church with him. Yes, Jeff. I really appreciate you being in the audience this evening and the good input you've given. It's been very helpful, both on YouTube and Facebook. And like I said, when we sign off, which I'm going to do here in just a minute, I usually like to keep it to about an hour, and we've been an hour and 20 tonight. So I am fixing to sign off. And I really appreciate the good comments and feedback and
all right, folks,
in the program this evening.
I think that's about it. I'm
If there's more
going to see if he says anything else, and then we'll be done.
On Bible Q&A. Bible Q&A is your Bible study hour. You ask the questions, and the Bible gives the answers. So post your questions, your comments in the comment section to these videos. Of course, I get the notification of those comments, and I'll plan on addressing those on future broadcasts of Bible Q&A. Thank you for watching this evening.
All right, everybody, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Got some reading I got to do. I got a couple books I got to do. Got to do some homework for school. Got to, let's see.
Died for our sin.
What's going on here? Anyways, I got a couple books I got to read. Got some homework I got to do, so I'm going to head out for now. Let's see what's tomorrow. What is tomorrow? Friday, I think. All right, so I'll be back tomorrow, most likely. Talk about something else. If you want me to do a video review, let me know, and we'll take care of it. So have a good day, and as always, hope the Lord blesses you in your study. Bye-bye.